Mom, I'm sorry, but Emma doesn't want you at the wedding. Those words fell in front of me like a cold, sharp knife. I froze, standing in the middle of the cafe, the clinking of spoons against glasses echoing like the metallic clang of an invisible courtroom. My only son, the one I had raised with every ounce of love and sacrifice I had just shut me out of the most important day of his life, all because I supposedly didn't fit the image. I looked at him, those eyes that 27 years ago had clung to me for warmth, now avoiding the gaze of his own mother. In that moment, I understood. Something had made my son turn away, and I knew it wasn't just Emma's suggestion. But, you see, everyone has a limit, and that very evening, as I stepped out of the cafe into the soft drizzle, I made a decision that would change my son's life forever. If he thought I wasn't worthy to attend his wedding, then I no longer needed to fund that wedding. Follow this story, because from the very moment I froze all the bank accounts and cards he was using, the truth behind that marriage began to emerge, and it was far darker than you could imagine. Mom, I'm sorry, but Emma doesn't want you at the wedding. That moment felt like a cold blade slicing straight through my chest. I sat frozen in our familiar cafe, the place we used to visit every weekend when he was little. The steam from my cup of hot coffee rose faintly in front of me, yet my hands were so cold I could barely feel them. I looked at my son, the only child I had, the last gift my husband left me before he died in that accident, and I wondered, how did we become strangers like this? My son couldn't look me in the eye. His gaze drifted away, as if facing the pain in his mother's eyes would make him collapse. I turned to stone. A widowed mother, raising a child alone for 27 years, never letting him lack anything, now being excluded from her own son's wedding because she doesn't fit the image. When I heard those words, it felt as though the wind had stopped blowing. The voices around me blurred into distant static. I tried to keep my voice steady. So that's what Emma told you? My son swallowed hard, his shoulders trembling slightly. It's not just Emma. It's also her family. They want the wedding to look perfect. Mom, you're too simple. Simple. I let out a soft laugh. A sound even I couldn't tell whether it carried pain, humiliation, or something much deeper. I looked down at my hands, the same hands that patched together every meal, every tuition payment, every night spent sitting beside him when he had a fever. And now, those hands were deemed unfit for my own son's wedding. But what choked me wasn't the words he said. It was the fact that he believed I could spoil the perfect image Emma had crafted. Deep down, I knew Emma wasn't simple. Her eyes, that slight curl of her lips whenever she stood beside my son, the soft-spoken sentences, light as air yet sharp enough to bend the thoughts of a young man blinded by love, all of it had unsettled me from the very first day we met. I stayed silent. I tried to respect his choice. I tried to be the modern mother who didn't meddle. But today, Emma crossed a line, a very far line. I heard the beginning of rain tapping against the window. Autumn rain, cold and persistent. It made the scene before me even gloomier, like a vague omen I couldn't quite describe. I took a long, deep breath. All right, I said quietly, each word closing an invisible door between mother and son. If that's what you two want. My son exhaled with relief, thinking I had accepted it. He didn't know that in that silence, in that very moment, I was making a different decision. A decision that one day he would understand, or resent me for the rest of his life. When I stepped out of the cafe, the drizzle landed softly on my face. I couldn't tell if it was rain or tears. I stood beneath the awning, watching my son walk away, feeling the same hollow emptiness I felt the night of my husband's funeral. I knew Emma was behind this. I knew exactly what she wanted: control, money, status. And a family like ours, loving, warm, but vulnerable, was the perfect prey. But Emma forgot one thing anyone touching a mother should remember. A mother can endure pain, humiliation, sacrifice. But if someone tries to break her child, she becomes the most terrifying force on earth. I tightened my fists. Something shifted inside me, not pain, but a cold clarity I hadn't felt since the day my husband died. I had been silent for too long, and today I decided to strike back. Very gently, very quietly, but enough to unravel the entire life Emma was trying to build upon lies. I opened my phone, scrolling through the list of bank accounts, savings funds, and supplementary cards my son had been using for years, all of them under my name. And from that moment on, the wheel of revenge began to turn. Leaving the cafe, I walked slowly beneath the awning, the echo of my son's words still lingering in my ears like the fading end of a broken melody. My heart still ached, but the pain was no longer sharp. It had turned into something dull, cold, and unmistakably clear, as if I had just stepped through a door I knew I could never return from. The rain grew heavier. Each drop fell onto my hair, my cheeks, blending with the shapeless emptiness settling inside my chest. I didn't cry. Not anymore. Because when a mother hurts to her deepest core, sometimes tears simply refuse to fall. I pulled my coat tighter and walked beneath the soaked row of trees. That afternoon, the streets blurred into a melancholic shade of gray. Yet strangely, my mind felt clearer than it ever had, as if the rain had washed away the last illusion that my son was still the little boy who clung to me whenever the night frightened him. A cold gust sliced across my face. I stopped. At that exact moment, I made the decision. If a mother is not worthy to attend the wedding, then she has no need to fund it either. I whispered those words into the wind, soft like a joke, yet in truth, they were the first blade I drew in a battle Emma had no idea she was about to face. I unlocked my phone. The screen lit up against the gloomy rain, reflecting the mix of pain and resolve in my eyes. Numbers, accounts, credit cards, savings funds, all of them appeared like a map I held absolute control over. For the past 5 years, my son had been using supplementary cards under my name. Wedding expenses, venue deposits, flowers, catering, all of it had been flowing from my accounts, the accounts of the mother who didn't fit the image. I took a long breath. One beat, then another. My fingers slid down to the lock card button. One by one, each card, each account, each fund, I locked them all. Not hurried, not trembling, every movement slow, precise, cold, as if I was stitching my own wound closed with steel thread. Outside, the rain hammered down harder, beating like a drum to accompany my quiet, ruthless decision. When I reached the final account, a confirmation message appeared. I stared at it, and for the first time in years, I smiled. Not a smile of pain, not a smile of satisfaction, a silent smile. The smile of a mother who has finally understood that sometimes, to save a child who has lost his way, you must be the first to cut off the road he is blindly walking down. I slid my phone back into my coat pocket and kept walking through the rain. Beneath my feet, puddles spread across the sidewalk, reflecting the gray sky. a sky as uncertain as my son's future once he discovered that every source of money had vanished. I knew he would be angry. I knew he would call. I knew Emma would be the first one to panic.
But I also knew something else. In this life, there are lessons only collapse can teach. I stopped at a bus stop as the wind lashed against my face. Across the street, a young couple held each other in the rain, their eyes full of hope and trust. I watched them and remembered myself and my husband long ago. A sharp ache passed through my chest. Then I whispered softly, as if into the air itself, as if sending the words straight to my son. My son, I'm not fighting to hurt you. I'm fighting so you can finally see who is truly destroying your life. I pulled my hood up and continued walking. Each step was firm now, no hesitation left, my back straight, my head held high, as though the rain was washing away not just the hurt, but all the weakness I had carried for far too long. And then, just as I turned the corner, my phone began to vibrate. Once, twice, again and again, the caller ID flashed clearly. My son. I didn't rush to answer. I stood there in the rain, closed my eyes, and took a deep breath. This battle had only just begun. My phone vibrated non-stop the entire way home. The yellow streetlights spilled across the rain-soaked pavement, reflecting my slow steps. No rush, no trembling like when I had left the cafe earlier that afternoon. I knew who was calling. I knew exactly how my son would react, but I wanted him to face the truth on his own first. Only when the first wave of panic hits does a person truly see where they're standing and who pushed them to the edge. By the time I unlocked my front door, took off my rain-drenched coat, and turned on the living room lights, the phone vibrated again, more frantically, more desperately. I answered. My son's voice burst through, choked with panic and anger. Mom, why are my cards locked? I need to pay the venue today and the catering. My payment got declined in front of everyone. I sat down on the sofa, slowly placing my towel on the table, not rushing to respond, just listening to his breath, shaky, chaotic, like his world had collapsed at the edges. I replied softly, my voice calm as a breeze. I'm not allowed to attend the wedding, right? Then I'm also not allowed to pay for it. There was silence on the other end, just one brief second, and then he exploded like a match dropped into gasoline. Are you trying to get back at me? How childish can you be? Do you know how embarrassed I was? Each word shot through my chest like an arrow. But I had prepared for this moment since this afternoon. I knew he would say such things. When he felt hurt, he always used anger to hide fear. I answered calmly, Are you embarrassed because the payment didn't go through, or because of me? Stop twisting things! This is my wedding! And then, right in the middle of our escalating argument, I heard what I had been waiting for. A woman's voice, quiet but sharp as a needle, behind him. Tell her to unlock the card. Hurry. If not, my family won't accept this next week. Tell her it's her responsibility as the mother. Every word, every breath from Emma. I heard it as clearly as if she were standing right behind me. My son thought I couldn't hear it, but I did, perfectly. My eyes narrowed. I leaned back on the sofa. A coldness spread through me like melting ice in winter air. A mother's responsibility? How interesting. I let the moment stretch for a few seconds, then asked directly, Emma is standing next to you, isn't she? The line grew awkwardly quiet. I heard whispers, the sound of my son covering the microphone, Emma urging him. And then he lied, so poorly it almost hurt. No, there's no one here. I closed my eyes.
That sentence hurt more than any accusation, not because he lied, but because he protected someone else by betraying the truth between mother and son. I continued, my voice calm in a way that bordered on frightening. I'll ask once more.
Do you want me to unlock the accounts? Because you need it or because Emma needs it? Silence. A deep, heavy silence. And in that silence, I heard Emma, small but piercing. Say it. She has to take responsibility. She owes us this wedding. I inhaled, a cold breath so sharp it ached in my ribs, and then I said the sentence that silenced them both. I owe no one anything, and neither do you. But if you let someone else pull your strings, you'll spend your whole life in debt without knowing who you're paying. Finally, my son snapped. What are you talking about? I glanced out the window, the rain still falling, tapping rhythmically like a heartbeat slowly settling. I locked the cards. I locked the accounts. I locked everything. You have no right! I cut him off. I do, because everything is under my name. The line went dead silent. No sound. Not even breathing. I knew exactly how shocked he was. And then I heard something crash. Emma must have thrown a cup, followed by her voice yelling in the background. Tell her to open them! Otherwise this wedding is over! I closed my eyes lightly, and I understood. I understood everything. It wasn't my son's anger. It wasn't that he valued money more than his mother. It was that Emma cornered him and used his panic to control him. My voice dropped low. You're scared, but you're not scared of me. You're scared of losing Emma. My son's voice cracked. Mom, stop. I replied, Fine, but remember, this is only the first shock. The truth behind Emma is just beginning to show. I hung up first. Outside, the rain continued tapping against the window. The house was so quiet I could hear my own heartbeat. No longer hurting, only cold and clear. That phone call didn't weaken me. It only confirmed one thing. I had to see this through, not for revenge, but to pull my son out of the hands of a woman who could make him lose everything. My son's phone went dead after his final burst of anger, leaving behind a hollow, stone-cold void in my chest. I sat silently by the window, watching the streetlights blur into streaks through the curtain of night rain. I wasn't angry at him. I just felt an indescribable emptiness. And somewhere, in the look in his eyes earlier, I saw something that wasn't my son at all, but the shadow of Emma standing behind him, tightening her grip on every one of his thoughts. I told myself, fine, if the truth is being hidden, then I will be the one to uncover it. And just when my emotions had barely begun to settle, the next part of the story slammed into me, as if fate wanted to see how many more blows my heart could withstand. That night, I received a call. A deep voice, familiar, steady, but one I hadn't heard in years. It's me, Jacob, your late husband's old friend, and the man who once promised he'd protect you and your son in his place. I froze. Jacob, lawyer, confidant, battlefield partner of my husband when he was still alive. He had vanished from our lives after the funeral, saying he didn't want to reopen old wounds. And yet, here he was, calling me now. Are you doing all right? I have something very important to tell you. I inhaled slowly. It's about Emma, isn't it? Silence. The kind of heavy silence that already contains its own answer. Jacob came to my house the next morning. The moment he stepped in, I saw the gravity in his eyes. He placed a thick, rigid folder in front of me, cold as the truth I was about to swallow. I wasn't planning to interfere,
but when I heard your son was asked to exclude you from the wedding, I knew things had gone too far." I opened the folder, and with just the first glance, my heart tightened. Debt invoices, credit statements, loan records, a private investigator's report, all bearing the same name, Emma Mueller. "Emma owes a considerable amount," Jacob continued,
"and there are signs she's trying to legitimize the debt through marriage, so she can tie your family into financial responsibility." My breath caught. Suddenly, every piece fell into place. Her excessive luxury, the absurdly extravagant wedding plan, the way she treated my family like an endless resource. I forced myself to stay calm. My son, does he know any of this? Jacob shook his head, his voice dropping lower. "Not at all. He thinks you're opposing the wedding out of prejudice, and Emma told him that you're a shameful mother." The words cut like a blade. So everything I had endured all this time was merely the surface of a much larger scheme. I closed my eyes for a moment, letting anger, sorrow, disappointment swirl together into something sharp and burning in my chest.
I whispered, barely holding myself together. "Jacob, what do I have to do to save my son?" He looked at me for a long moment before answering. "You don't need to do anything, except brace yourself. When this truth comes out, your son will be hurt. But better to feel pain once than be destroyed for a lifetime." I clutched the folder tightly, and in that moment, something deep within me, the part that had endured, compromised, hoped, began to quietly transform. I told myself, Emma thinks I'm a gentle, easy-to-manipulate mother. But she forgets one thing. I was the wife of a sharp, resilient man. I am not someone who lets anyone harm my family. The room seemed brighter, or maybe it was just the spark of determination igniting inside me. A plan, silent but razor-sharp, began to form, and everything was only the beginning.
After Jacob left, the house grew so silent I could hear the second hand on the clock jumping. On the table, the folder about Emma still lay there. Like an unexploded bomb, I knew. Sooner or later, the truth would have to be faced. But I didn't expect it to come this fast. Barely 2 hours later, before the sky had even settled into night, my front door was pounded so hard that the wooden frame rattled. I startled and stepped into the living room. My son's voice burst through, heavy with anger. "Mom, open the door!" I drew in a long, steady breath. This moment, neither of us could avoid any more. I opened the door. My son stood there, face flushed, hair disheveled, as if he had run all the way. His eyes were no longer the gentle ones from his childhood. They were the eyes of a man cornered, desperate. "Are you doing all this to get back at me?" he hissed, each word forced out between clenched teeth. I looked at him, long and hard. I let the silence stretch until the fury in his eyes began to shift, first to confusion, then to doubt. Then I spoke, softly, but with a burn beneath every syllable. "No, I'm doing this to save you." The confusion froze into shock. He opened his mouth to argue, but I stepped aside and motioned him in. He entered, closed the door, and instantly the air thickened, dense, charged, like a storm about to break inside these walls. I grabbed the phone I had prepared earlier. It wasn't just Emma's debt records. I had something stronger, an audio recording. Not long, just a few sentences, but enough to shatter Emma's perfect mask. I pressed play. Emma's voice filled the room, sweet, but cold, like a honey-coated blade. "Once we're married, his mom's money becomes ours. As long as the wedding happens,
He won't dare separate finances anymore. My son froze. The color drained from his face as though someone had pulled the life out of him.
I saw it. The exact moment his heart cracked, the instant he realized something was terribly wrong. But then, he did what every mother fears most. He closed his own eyes to the truth.
No, Emma's not like that. Maybe she was joking, or someone edited it. He stepped back, searching the air for something to hold on to. Mom, you never liked Emma. You want to break us up, don't you? My throat tightened. I saw a flash of the boy he used to be, lost, frightened, reaching for someone to trust. But now, he didn't trust me. He trusted the woman pulling him toward a cliff. I didn't yell, I didn't cry. I simply placed my hand on the folder Jacob had given me. If I wanted to sabotage you, I could have done it 5 years ago, when you put all your finances into the joint account under my name for management. But I didn't, because I wanted you safe. His eyes flickered.
I continued, my voice steady, though the pain behind it nearly made my knees give way. If I wanted revenge, I wouldn't have raised you alone for 27 years. I wouldn't have saved every penny so you could have a future. I wouldn't have hidden my tears just so you'd think I was strong. I stepped closer, looking straight into the eyes of the son I had held for over 2 decades. I am doing only one thing: protecting you from someone who looks at you like a walking ATM. The air thickened until neither of us could breathe. My son lowered his head. His hands trembled. I knew he was fighting himself. Between love and truth, between the mother who raised him and the woman whispering sugar-coated poison into his ear. Finally, he lifted his head, and what he said made my whole body go cold. I need to talk to Emma. I can't just believe one side. I closed my eyes. He didn't believe me, even with the evidence in his hands.
But when I opened them again, I didn't beg. Instead, I said, "All right, go. But remember this, the truth doesn't change, no matter how many times you look away." My son turned, opened the door, and walked out. Behind him lay only emptiness, cold and bare, like a house licked by flames, stripped to ash. But I knew this wasn't the end. Emma wouldn't sit still once she realized her finances were frozen, and my son would soon face something far worse than a recording. A fire had ignited inside my home, and the one who poured the gasoline wasn't me. When my son left the house, the soft click of the closing door was barely a sound, yet to me, it was the collapse of an entire world. I stood still, staring at the empty space he had just walked through. I wasn't angry. I was simply in pain. A pain both dull and razor sharp, but having come this far, I couldn't stop now. I knew Emma wouldn't stay quiet. And just as I expected, the storm arrived only one night later. The next morning, while I was organizing the documents Jacob had given me, my phone rang, an unknown number. I hesitated for a second, then answered. "Hello, is this the groom's mother?" The voice of a wedding venue receptionist floated through, polite but tense. I frowned slightly. "Yes, it is. What's the matter?" The receptionist lowered her voice, as if afraid someone might overhear. "A young woman came in claiming she's you. She said she needed to withdraw the contract and switch to another service package, but her voice didn't match yours. So we wanted to verify." I closed my eyes for a brief moment. Emma. She was starting to show her true colors. I asked calmly, "Is she still there?" "Yes. She's waiting in the lobby. She seems impatient." I stood up, grabbed my keys, and said, "Keep her there. I'm coming."
15 minutes later, I walked into the venue lobby. The air was cool and lightly scented with lilies, yet to me it felt prickled with thorns. And just as the receptionist said, Emma was sitting with her legs crossed, her makeup flawless, but her eyes full of irritation and bitterness. When she saw me, she froze for half a second. Then she curved her lips into a thin, defiant smile. "You got here fast." She dragged out the word "you," a deliberate jab. I walked straight to the counter, placing myself between her and the receptionist. I spoke loudly and clearly. "I am the groom's mother, and I have never signed any document to withdraw this contract."
The receptionist let out a quiet breath of relief. "Yes, ma'am. We suspected something was off, so we didn't process the request." Emma shot to her feet.
"What do you think you're doing? I'm his fiancée. I have the right to make decisions." I turned to her. My gaze was cold enough that she stiffened. "You are not me, and this contract is under my name. No one has the right to sign on my behalf." The entire lobby fell into silence. A few staff exchanged glances, already suspicious. Emma lost her composure. I saw her fists tighten, veins rising on her skin. Then suddenly, she lunged forward. Smack! A slap struck the side of my face. The sound cracked through the elegant lobby like a stray gunshot. Everyone froze. My head tilted slightly from the impact. Heat spread across my cheek and down my neck. But I didn't strike back. I didn't flinch. I stood still, calm, steady, unshaken as stone. Emma, however, was not. She panted heavily, eyes bloodshot, hair coming undone from rage. "You have no right to ruin my wedding. That money is ours. This ceremony is mine. Who do you think you are to Emma?" I cut her off, my voice low but sharper than steel. "You just destroyed yourself." Her brows knitted, confusion flickering. Right as the venue supervisor stepped out from behind us, face grave. "Ladies, the lobby cameras captured everything." Emma froze as if turned to stone. The supervisor continued. "Physically assaulting a client and attempting to forge a signature to withdraw a contract are serious violations. We will provide the footage to the authorities if necessary." Emma's hand trembled, her lips drained of color. All traces of her earlier arrogance evaporated. As for me, I tightened my grip on my handbag, keeping my tone even. I didn't do anything. I only came to confirm the truth. The staff looked at Emma with wary, cautious eyes. Emma turned to me, hatred and fear swirling in her gaze. I knew. Today, her mask had finally fallen. But the part that chilled me the most wasn't the slap, nor her blatant disrespect. It was when Emma stormed out of the lobby, pacing fast, phone pressed to her ear. "He has to believe me. He has to believe me. I can't let his mother win." I stood still. I knew exactly whom she was calling, and I knew the next wave of the storm would come from the person I loved most. This battle had only just begun. After the slap in the middle of the banquet hall, the air inside the restaurant still felt suffocating. I stood there in silence, watching Emma retreat, her eyes a mixture of fear and hatred. The receptionist leaned toward me and whispered, "Do you want to press charges?" I shook my head slightly, not because I forgave her, but because I knew sometimes it doesn't take a lawsuit to destroy someone's peace of mind. A gust of night wind carried the sound of soft rain outside, reminding me that this game had only just begun. Emma had no idea that I had prepared for every one of her steps. I went home, exhaustion and tension wrapping around me, but beneath it all was a strange, burning determination. Every strike, every move, all aimed toward one goal: saving my son from Emma, the woman who had quietly sowed destruction beneath her polished exterior. That night, my phone rang nonstop. I answered. "Mom, Emma called the police. She said you attacked her." My son's voice cracked.
I didn't flinch. In fact, I smiled in the dark. All right, if needed, I'll cooperate, but the truth will stand with me, son. Just a few minutes later, a police car pulled up in front of my house. I opened the door to welcome them, calm but fully in control. The officers reviewed the incident report, checked the restaurant surveillance footage, and listened to Emma dramatize her version of events. She was so tense, her voice trembled, her hands shaking as she held her papers. I watched her closely. Emma no longer had that confident, glamorous aura from the day before. Instead, panic seeped through every small detail. The veins on her hands, her wide eyes, the way she bit her lip, her heartbeat racing. One officer asked bluntly, "Do you have any documents proving that signing the contract on his behalf was legal?" Emma remained silent. Then another officer turned to me, tilting his head slightly. "Ma'am, would you like to make a statement? We can record everything."
I took a deep breath. I'm not pressing charges, but I'm willing to provide all evidence. When I opened my laptop and presented the folder Jacob had given me, fake invoices, forged documents, emails, and a voice recording of Emma, the police officers frowned. They whispered among themselves, quickly realizing Emma wasn't just involved in assaulting an older woman. She was potentially guilty of forgery, financial fraud. What she believed to be her perfect plan was now turning against her. One officer approached me, his voice firm. "You know, forging signatures and assaulting an elder is a criminal offense. If we dig deeper, she could face prosecution." I nodded, face steady. No remorse, no fear. Because I knew, justice doesn't need haste. It arrives when the evidence is strong enough. Then something unexpected happened.
Another officer reviewing Emma's file looked up at me. "Ma'am, did you know she was previously investigated for financial misconduct in another state? Signs of fraud, tax evasion, but no conviction. If we contact her previous case officers, this could make her current situation far more serious." A cold shiver ran down my spine, but not from fear. It was confirmation that every move I had prepared would leave Emma with no way back. Emma stood there, eyes wide, lips trembling, staring at me speechlessly. With every passing second, I watched panic spill out of her, shaking hands, bent posture, shrinking movements. Her true self, finally stripped bare. My son stood beside us, silent, eyes clouded with confusion. I saw the conflict in him, caught between trusting his mother and clinging to Emma. But now, with Emma's mask falling apart, for the first time my son had the chance to see the truth.
One of the officers placed a reassuring hand on my shoulder. "Ma'am, please stay calm. Let us handle this. But if you want, we can formally warn your son about the financial risks associated with her." I smiled, eyes bright. "Thank you. I'll show my son the truth, in a way he cannot ignore, not through words, but through evidence." Emma screamed, trying to interject. "No! Things won't go the way you want. I'm his fiancé. He has to listen to me." But this time, no one moved, not even my son. I stood tall, like a stone wall, eyes locked onto her. "This isn't your battle with me. This is a battle with the truth. And you lost the moment you thought you could deceive my family." The officers recorded everything, and Emma, overwhelmed, burst into tears, shaking uncontrollably. I didn't sigh, nor smile triumphantly. I simply looked at my son, my eyes filled with unwavering resolve. "See, things are never as rosy as people pretend.
And sometimes,
To save you, I have to let the truth speak for itself." That night, Emma was held for investigation on charges of forgery and assault, while my son and I looked at each other, a heavy silence settling between us. We knew the war wasn't over yet, but at the very least, for the first time, my son was beginning to see who truly stood between our family.
After the night Emma was detained by the police, the house fell into an uncanny silence. Outside, the rain kept falling, soft, steady, like the rhythm of my heartbeat counting down each moment. I sat on the sofa, the warm yellow light spilling across the open file on the table. Everything seemed to have calmed for a moment, yet deep inside, I knew the storm hadn't passed. Emma wasn't finished. She wasn't ready to leave my family alone. And my son? He was still trapped between two worlds. Around 2 a.m., loud knocking jolted me upright. I walked to the door, opened it, and saw my son standing there, soaked in rain, eyes swollen red, shoulders trembling. The hallway lights cast a faint glow on his young face, twisted with fear and confusion. I knew instantly. He wasn't angry with me. He was simply lost. "Mom, I'm sorry," he choked out, voice breaking as if this midnight moment was the first time he had allowed himself to face the truth.
I stepped forward, placing a hand on his shoulder. His trembling seeped into me, but I held myself steady. I took a long breath, soft, calm, grounded. "You don't need to apologize. You need to decide." He froze, as if those words had awakened something buried deep within him. He looked at me, eyes wide, fighting back tears, only to lose the battle moments later. Between us, the silence thickened, filled only with the sound of rain and two restless heartbeats. I walked to the table, opened my laptop, and clicked on the email from the wedding venue. The screen lit up with the official notice. Due to incomplete payment from the client, the event will be canceled. I looked at my son. I watched his expression shift from confusion to shock, then slowly into fear. "Mom, what is this?" he whispered, voice shaking. I smiled, not a triumphant smile, but the quiet smile of someone who had waited for the truth to reveal itself. I gently placed my hand over his.
"Emma has no money to pay. Everything you thought was love, every perfect wedding plan, it was all a mask. And now, that mask has fallen." My son lowered his head, his shoulders collapsing. For the first time, he was seeing the real woman behind the facade, the one he had trusted, given his heart and future to. "Mom, I can't believe," he stammered. I trusted her too much. You were right. Emma was just using me." I cupped his cheek gently, my voice soft but unwavering. "That's why I did what I did. Not to punish you, but to keep you from losing everything. You see now? I've been protecting you, even when you didn't understand." Tears streamed down his face, mixing with the rain still dripping from his hair. For the first time in years, my son cried not from anger or confusion, but because the truth had finally broken through the lies he'd been fed. "Mom, you were right," he whispered, voice trembling. "I misjudged you, and I misjudged myself." I pulled him into my arms tight. No words could truly capture the weight of that moment. I knew then my son had awakened, not only to Emma's true face, but to the love and sacrifice of his mother, something he had taken for granted for so long, something he was only now feeling with his whole heart. Holding him, I thought of the days ahead. Emma would not give up easily, but now my son had enough strength to stand between truth and deception. He would no longer be controlled. The rain kept falling, but inside me, a strange peace began to bloom. The revenge journey wasn't over yet, but for the first time, it had become a rescue mission. My son lifted his head, eyes red but burning with newfound resolve. "Mom, I won't let her hurt us anymore." I smiled. Yes, this awakening had come late, but it would change everything. And from that moment on, I knew Emma had lost her grip on my son completely,
irrevocably, with no path back.
The next morning, when the rain had finally stopped and the first sliver of dawn slipped through the window, I sat at my writing desk. My fingers carefully shaped each word on the letter, as if every line were a wound being stitched after a long, violent night. I knew my son was standing between two worlds, one shaped by the truth he had just awakened to, and the other by the remnants of trust he still had in Emma. I set the pen down and read the letter once more, whispering the words silently. My dear son, I am ready to support you in every decision you make, but I am not here to indulge someone else's cruelty. You must learn to stand firmly on your own feet and to see through the truth, even when your heart wants to believe what it wishes were real. This letter was not blame. It wasn't a harsh warning. It was a reminder, a guiding light meant to lead him out of the maze Emma had built around him for so long.
I placed the letter in an envelope, leaving it on the table, knowing he would find it when he was calmer, when he was ready to face what lay ahead. The day passed. I cleaned the house, focused on small tasks, but a lingering instinct told me Emma wouldn't remain quiet. What I felt wasn't just personal anger. It was the resistance of someone who had been exposed, someone losing control over my son. That night, the rattling of a window woke me from sleep. My heart pounded as I peeked outside. Under the streetlight, shadows moved quickly, and it wasn't anyone else. It was Emma. She had crept into the yard, holding something concealed under her coat. I didn't shout. I didn't run outside. Any impulsive reaction would only give her exactly what she wanted. Instead, I pressed the security camera button and watched. Emma began smashing the flower pots on my front porch, then pried open a few exterior drawers. Every movement was captured clearly. Undeniable evidence.
She screamed hateful words, shouted my name over and over, but I only listened. I didn't respond. Inside, I felt something strange, a faint, cold satisfaction. Because at last, my plan had placed her exactly where she belonged, exposed by her own actions. I sat back in my chair, closed my eyes, and thought of my son. I knew that when he read the letter, when he saw what the cameras captured, he would understand. He would see that his mother wasn't just protecting him. I was setting boundaries so he could stand tall on his own. All night, Emma continued her frenzy, breaking, screaming, spiraling deeper into desperation. Every sound was a reminder that truth cannot be hidden, and cruelty always has consequences. When dawn arrived, Emma finally left, abandoning the wreckage she had created in her rage. The next morning, I reviewed the footage. Every frantic movement, every wild, panicked expression on her face appeared perfectly clear. I called my son over and showed him, his eyes filled with both fear and awakening. The blind trust he once had in Emma was gone, replaced by the reality of who she truly was. "Mom, how did you know?" he asked, voice trembling. I smiled, gentle but firm. I didn't need to know in advance. I just needed to pay attention and act when the time was right. Son, I have limits too, and those limits exist to protect you, not to make me silently endure everything. In that moment, I realized something important. Revenge wasn't just about striking back. It was strategy. It was patience. It was knowing exactly when to lift your hand and when to let someone destroy themselves. Emma thought she could tear us apart, but the truth was, she was already unraveling, and she would face every consequence under the clear-eyed gaze of both mother and son. And when my son wrapped his arms around me, truly, sincerely, for the first time in weeks, I felt trust slowly returning. This wasn't simple healing. It was a profound lesson. Even in the storm, a mother can draw the line to protect her family. And sometimes, those very boundaries become her greatest weapon. Emma had damaged my home, but she hadn't broken my son's mind. And from this moment on, I knew. The journey of revenge and protection had only just begun.
Yet the first victory was already mine.
After the night Emma destroyed my home, when dawn filtered softly through the window, I knew a new chapter of this war was opening. Court. Not just a place to judge her actions, but the place where my son would finally see who truly stood between us. I reminded myself, revenge isn't always a violent strike. It is letting the truth rise, letting justice do what it was built to do. My son's eyes were still red, but this time, they held the clarity of someone who had finally awakened. As we stepped into the tiled hall of the courthouse, Emma approached with her usual arrogance, yet beneath it, her eyes flickered with fear. She already sensed the game was no longer in her hands. The judge's gavel slammed, sharp and echoing. The courtroom stilled.
"Mrs. Smith, please present your statement," the judge said.
I rose, holding the file I had prepared with precision. I looked at Emma first, her forced composure cracking at the edges, then at my son, who watched every movement I made.
I took a steady breath and spoke, my voice calm but unwavering. I will not allow my son to live his life shrouded in humiliation. I will not let him believe he must sacrifice his integrity, safety, or family for someone who only knows how to exploit him. Everything Emma has done, from property damage to forged signatures, even physical assault, is supported with clear evidence. A heavy silence blanketed the room. Emma's shoulders tightened, her hands curled into fists, but she remained speechless. I continued, firm and deliberate. I have done everything I could to protect my son, to show him that truth will always outshine deception. I am not here to retaliate. I am here to defend the person I cherish most, my child. Then, something unexpected happened. My son stood up. His hands trembled slightly, but his gaze burned with resolve. He stepped forward. "Your Honor," he said, voice steadying with each word, "I witnessed everything. I know my mother has only ever acted to protect me from Emma's manipulation. I volunteer to testify against my own fiancé." A wave of murmurs spread across the courtroom. Emma's eyes widened, shock draining the color from her face. Her voice cracked as she stammered, No, you can't. Why would you?" My son turned to her, then back to the judge, jaw firm. "My mother is not the villain. Emma lied. She manipulated. I believed her once, but now I see the truth. I won't let her destroy my family any longer." A storm of emotion surged in my chest, fierce, overwhelming, yet soft around the edges. After years of struggle, deceit, and fear, my son was finally standing tall, finally choosing truth, finally choosing himself. And for the first time, I knew my revenge had done exactly what it needed to do, not to punish Emma, but to open my son's eyes. The judge turned to Emma, voice stern. "Based on the evidence and the testimonies presented, the court will deliver an appropriate sentence for property damage and assault." Emma collapsed into her seat, hands covering her face, her composure shattered. Meanwhile, my son looked at me, his eyes soft, grateful, apologetic. I walked toward him, placed a hand on his shoulder, and whispered, "You see, I told you the truth would win. And today, you proved it with me." Standing beside him, I realized something profound. Revenge wasn't just making Emma pay. It was teaching my son the difference between love and manipulation, truth and illusion. It was watching him rise from the darkness someone else had wrapped around him for years. Emma would now face the consequences of her choices. My son would finally step out of her shadow, and I would remain exactly where I had always been, his anchor, his shield,
his reminder that family stands stronger than any deception. This battle wasn't the end.
But for the first time, we had won a crucial victory. The victory of truth, of clarity, of love reclaimed. Every step, every decision, every carefully crafted move had been worth it. Not for vengeance alone, but so my son would never again live under the weight of someone else's lies. And that was the real verdict. Not just from the court, but from the heart of a mother. The next morning, as sunlight slipped through the curtains, I stood by the window looking out at the empty yard. Today was supposed to be a radiant day. The day my son put on his suit, walked down the aisle, and placed a ring on Emma's finger. But instead of flowers and cheerful music, all that remained was the sound of courtroom doors slamming shut, pulling Emma into the hands of the law. My son sat on a stone bench outside the courthouse, his hands trembling uncontrollably, his eyes red and chaotic. He should have been happy, preparing for a new life. Instead, he stared blankly into the emptiness ahead of him, as if everything had been ripped away. His sighs blended with the footsteps echoing down the hallway, creating a heavy rhythm that would stay with me forever. Mom, I've lost everything. His voice cracked, shattered. I walked toward him, knelt beside him, and placed a steady yet gentle hand on his shoulder. I held his trembling hand, looked straight into his frightened eyes, and said, "No, you just escaped a life of being controlled." He blinked, startled, still unable to fully believe my words, but I could feel something shifting inside him. I squeezed his hand gently, emphasizing each word. Everything you thought was love, family, happiness, was nothing more than a trap. Emma wanted to own you, shape you, turn you into her tool, but you broke free. You lost nothing except the chains you never realized were there. I pulled him into my arms, and for the first time in years, I felt his heartbeat slow, his breath deepen. Fear was retreating, replaced by something unfamiliar but liberating: freedom. My son had not only escaped a carefully woven snare, he had stood firmly on his own 2 feet, facing the truth without the shadows of deception clouding his vision. Memories flooded my mind, the long years raising him alone, the dreams he once had for happiness, my unwavering belief in him, and the countless times I stayed silent, patient, watching him drift under Emma's influence. Now, all those sacrifices finally felt worthwhile. "Mom, I don't even know what to say," he whispered, and tears fell. This time, tears of release, not anger or disappointment. I tightened my grip on his hand and whispered, "I did everything so you wouldn't spend your life chained to something you couldn't see. You stood up for yourself today, and I'm proud of you." In the distance, Emma was led away by officers. Her eyes were frantic, her mouth opening as if to protest, but no one cared to listen anymore. All her schemes, her manipulation, her sweetly disguised traps collapsed under the weight of truth. She was no longer the powerful woman my son once adored. She was just a fallen fraud, a living lesson we had survived together. My son hugged me, really hugged me, for the first time in years. It was a hug filled with gratitude, love, and a trust I thought I had lost forever. I felt every heartbeat, every breath, and knew this moment was not just a victory for me, but a turning point for him. "Mom, you're my hero," he whispered, voice trembling yet certain. I smiled and looked out toward the empty yard where the wedding should have taken place. No flowers, no music, no extravagance. Just a bright sky, the rain finally gone, and the 2 of us standing together in the truth. I held his hand as we walked away,
leaving behind every lie, every pressure, every chain Emma had wrapped around his heart. Deep down, I knew the revenge journey had ended, but the journey of rebuilding our family had only just begun. We would move forward, stronger, wiser, and most importantly, free.
Today, the wedding turned into a lesson, an awakening, and a reminder that sometimes what feels like loss is actually the beginning of an entirely new life. And in that moment, I understood clearly. My son had finally broken free from his chains, and I had fulfilled my promise as a mother. After the moment my son held me tightly, after the storms of emotion finally settled, we stood together under the porch, gazing at the small garden where the wedding should have taken place. No flowers, no music, only the stillness that follows a long stretch of thunder and chaos. I took a deep breath, my heart lighter, yet weighed with thoughts. The journey of taking revenge on Emma had ended, but the journey of teaching my son the meaning of family, of love, of sacrifice, was still unfolding. I walked back inside toward the old cabinet I hadn't opened in years. It was where I kept memories, letters, keepsakes, breaths of the past, and tears I never let anyone see. Among them was a sealed envelope I had guarded carefully. Since the day my husband passed away, I had never opened it, nor thought of giving it to our son. But now, after everything, I knew the time had come. I took the envelope into my hands, feeling the stiff paper beneath my fingertips, and placed it gently into my son's palms. He looked at me, surprised, uncertain. I smiled softly, my voice low and steady. "My son, this is the letter your father wrote before he left us. He wanted you to read it, when you were ready to understand." He opened the envelope slowly, his hands trembling, eyes widening as though he couldn't believe this moment was real. I watched him read, each line dancing in the fading afternoon light. "If one day your mother is no longer here, remember to put her before your pride. Always protect her. Never let anyone or anything harm her. Love and loyalty are not always easy, but they are the most precious things you can give your family." My son said nothing. He held the letter in silence, his eyes blurring with tears. I stood beside him, watching each tear roll down his face, each broken breath, each crack in his heart as the weight of his father's words sank in. He was seeing the past, but also the responsibility and love he had inherited from the father he lost and from the mother still standing beside him. Mom, Dad. He thought about me, worried for me, all this time. His voice shook, breaking. I'm sorry for doubting you, for believing her." I wiped his tears gently, my tone heavy yet warm. "You don't need to apologize. You only need to understand. Every choice, every mistake, they're lessons for you to grow. Your father believed in you, and now I do too. You're strong enough to walk out of the darkness." He clutched the letter to his chest, then turned and wrapped his arms around me. In that moment, I felt the connection of 3 generations: love, sacrifice, trust. His tears were no longer from pain, but from release, clarity, and the beginning of something new. "I'll never forget Dad's words, or yours," he whispered. "I'll always protect you, and I'll live the way he wanted me to." I smiled, watching him with a swelling sense of peace and quiet joy. I knew then that my son was no longer lost, no longer bound by lies, no longer manipulated by cruel intentions, and no sense of loss could drag him down again. That letter wasn't just a message from my late husband. It was a bridge, an invisible thread tying us together, reminding us that family, love, and loyalty are the real strength in this world. I held my son's hand, softly, firmly, as if passing on all the peace and determination I'd carried in my heart for over 20 years. In that moment,
standing between the quiet house and the silent garden, I realized a profound truth. Revenge was done. Justice was served. But love and the lessons of family were what truly remained, stronger and steadier than any storm. My son had awakened, and I had kept my promise to my husband and to my child.
That day, the letter didn't just open a memory. It opened a path for us to keep moving forward, free, stronger, and full of love. Something no one, not even Emma, could ever steal or manipulate again.
After handing my husband's letter to my son, the little house seemed strangely peaceful. The soft afternoon light slipped through the window frame, resting upon the keepsakes I had guarded all my life, reminders of happy days and of losses too deep to ever fade. I sat by the old stove, tapping my fingers gently against my knee, feeling the rhythm of my son's heartbeat calming, no longer chaotic as it had been before. My son walked into the room. His eyes were still red, but now they carried a different kind of resolve. He stood before me silently, hesitating for a brief second, then suddenly knelt down and wrapped his arms tightly around me. For the first time in so many years, I felt warmth, true warmth, trust, and complete, unfiltered love from him. The pain, misunderstandings, and anger built up over the years dissolved instantly in that single embrace.
Mom, I'm sorry for doubting you, for believing someone else, for not listening to you, he whispered, his voice trembling but sincere. I held his hands, tears rolling down my cheeks, not from sorrow, but from a deep, almost overwhelming happiness. My son had grown. He had seen the truth. He finally understood a mother's love. I answered, my voice low and warm. You don't need to apologize. All you need to know is you stood tall, and I'm proud of you. We prepared dinner together, a simple meal, but filled with affection. I brought out the dishes he loved most, placed them on the table, and watched a faint smile appear on his face for the first time since the storm of chaos had begun. We laughed. We talked. Each peaceful moment began to refill the house, washing away painful memories and replacing them with warmth, connection, and a bond time could never break. In the middle of dinner, I saw him pick up a letter from the mail tray. He opened it. Emma.
She had written from prison, begging for forgiveness, asking him to open his heart and give her a chance to fix everything. I watched quietly, his eyes widened slightly, his hands trembling as he held the letter. I knew at that moment that choosing to reject or forgive her would mark a defining turning point in his maturity. Without a single word, my son tore the letter into pieces. He threw them into the trash with absolute clarity. His eyes, for the first time, held no hesitation, not a trace of doubt, only a fierce determination. He would never forgive the person who manipulated, deceived, and wounded our family. I felt the strength radiating from him, the strength I had always hoped he would grow into, finally becoming real. I gently placed my hand on his shoulder and smiled. That's your choice, and I respect you. I told you, love does not mean accepting cruelty or lies. You stood up for yourself, and I'm proud of that.
Just like that, the whole house seemed to brighten, as if every wound, every tear, every fear had been wiped clean. The fire had dimmed, but a warm, steady light filled every corner of our home, illuminating even the shadows that had once haunted us. My son had fully awakened. He now understood that real love was not words. It was action, courage, and the choice to stand against what is wrong.
I looked around the room, the simple dishes, the soft laughter, the gentle sunlight, and my heart overflowed with peace, a peace I hadn't felt in years. My son and I had survived the storm together, reclaimed justice for ourselves, and now we were rebuilding trust and happiness from the fragments of the past. For the first time in so long, I understood something profound. Revenge was complete. Justice was served. But what remained, the most unshakable thing of all, was family love, honesty, and trust, nurtured through every action.
Emma could beg for forgiveness from prison, but we, mother and son, chose our own path. A brighter path. A path with no shadows of deceit, no lingering fear. I smiled as I looked at my son sitting beside me, our hands intertwined, and I knew that from this moment on, our house was not merely a place to live, but a symbol of rebirth, of family strength, and of true love. Something no one, not even the cruelest person, could ever destroy.
After our quiet little dinner, as the late afternoon sunlight bathed the kitchen in golden hues, I stood in the living room watching my son. He had grown more than ever before, not a trace of confusion in his eyes, no more tears of loss or disappointment. Instead, there was clarity, a resolve to stand on his own and rebuild his life. I knew that his awakening did not end with seeing the truth about Emma. He still had to learn to be independent, to take responsibility, and to make his own choices for happiness. He looked at me, his voice low but steady. "Mom, I want to come live with you for a while. I want to start over, from the beginning, with you." A gentle joy stirred in me, but I also knew this reintegration had to come with responsibility. I opened my arms to welcome him, yet my voice carried a firmer tone. "All right, you can live with me, but this time things will be different. I'll reopen your account, but you must learn to stand on your own 2 feet. No more relying on anyone, no more being manipulated or taken advantage of. You must take control of your own life." He nodded, his eyes bright, and I knew he was ready. These months living together would not only rebuild our relationship, but also give him the chance to learn responsibility, decision-making, and self-love. But the most surprising moment came one day when he approached me, his eyes sparkling with excitement. "Mom, I want to organize my own wedding. This time, I want to do it myself, and the person I want to marry is the girl you once helped long ago." I was stunned. Memories rushed back. She had once stood at the threshold of life with empty hands, no one to lift her up, and it was I, by a random moment of chance, who had given her an opportunity, support, and faith. And now, fate had strangely brought her to become my son's chosen happiness. "Mom, I want to do everything differently.
I want to prepare it myself, decide it myself, and prove that I deserve this happiness." I looked at him, seeing the maturity in his gaze, the inner strength he had never possessed before. I smiled warmly. "You've learned so much, from mistakes, from pain, and from me. Now I believe you can stand on your own and build your own life. And if your happiness comes from you, I will support it." Days passed as we prepared together for this special wedding. No more false grandeur, no more flashy music to hide the truth, only simple, heartfelt arrangements, every detail infused with love and the independence my son had learned. I witnessed each step, each decision he made, and realized that this was the greatest victory, not revenge against Emma, but giving him the chance to find happiness, maturity, and appreciation for what truly matters. One afternoon, as my son practiced his wedding vows, his gaze met mine, a smile full of joy and gratitude on his face. In that moment, I realized life's magic. Hardships, losses, and even battles of revenge were not merely trials. They were opportunities for him to grow, for our family to become stronger, and for true love to shine. I gently placed my hand on his shoulder, closed my eyes, and whispered in my heart, "Finally,
I've kept my promise. You have stood on your own, and now you will choose your own happiness. I am proud of you, and our family has finally found the light after the storm. My heart overflowed with trust and peace. This new choice was not just an opportunity for him to start anew, was proof that, no matter the storms, love, protection, and honesty always guide us to the right path. This wedding would mark the beginning of a new chapter, a chapter full of hope, maturity, and true happiness, built from the hands and heart of my son.
After weeks of preparing the wedding, with every detail personally decided by my son, our little home was filled with excitement and hope. There was no imposition, no shadow of the past, only confident steps, mature decisions, and genuine love slowly taking shape. I watched every action of his, seeing the radiant light in his eyes as he checked each flower arrangement, every chair, and every small detail for the ceremony. Watching him build his own happiness, my heart swelled with pride and joy, a feeling I hadn't fully experienced in years. Finally, the wedding day arrived. It was simple, unpretentious, set in the apple orchard behind our house, the place holding countless family memories, decorated modestly with white ribbons and soft golden lights. The scent of apple blossoms wafted through the breeze. Birds sang gently, creating a serene and warm scene, far from the lavish weddings my son had once imagined. My son stood tall, eyes bright with determination.
His bride, gentle and kind, stood beside him, her gaze full of love and gratitude, yet also filled with respect for the mother who had nurtured, protected, and guided her son through so many storms. I sat in the front row, heart overflowing with emotion. Years of pain, battles of revenge, shocks, and tears all seemed to converge in this moment. As soft music played, my son approached me just before the ceremony began. He bent down and handed me a simple yet meaningful bridal bouquet. I had no words, only the warmth of his hands passing the flowers to mine, spreading a comforting glow throughout my being. Mom, today, you are the most important person to me. His voice trembled but was steady, carrying all the love, gratitude, and understanding that only a child who has matured and weathered life's storms can express. I froze, tears brimming in my eyes, but a smile spread across my lips.
This was not just a bouquet. It was a testament to the journey we had walked together. Revenge, protection, teaching, and ultimately saving our family. All the pain, loss, and lonely days I had endured now felt complete and meaningful. My son turned to his bride, exchanged rings, and held her hand. I watched the scene, heart filled with happiness, pride, and absolute peace. I had witnessed my child grow, stand on his own, choose his happiness, and face the truth without being manipulated. In that moment, the apple orchard seemed to glow brighter. A gentle breeze stirred the leaves, sunlight streamed through the branches, and I realized that the revenge journey had truly ended. Not through vengeance or judgment, but by saving the family, protecting my son from the shadows, and passing on to him the strength to walk forward on his own. I smiled, silently telling myself, every sacrifice, every pain, every brave decision had been worth it.
Today, I was not just a mother, but a witness, a protector, and a pillar for my son's happiness. The journey of revenge had closed, but the journey of love, guidance, and witnessing his growth continued. The bouquet in my hands was more than a wedding symbol. It was a symbol of victory, victory of love, patience, and the power of family. And when my son handed me the flowers, saying I was the most important person, I knew that every suffering, every wound had transformed into strength, allowing love and family to shine despite all the storms that had passed.
That day, under the soft golden sunlight of the apple orchard, I breathed deeply, smiled, and felt fully. The revenge story had ended, but true happiness, freedom, maturity, and family was only just beginning.